Hi, students. Today I've decided not to do the lab, but instead we are going to be familiarizing ourselves more with atoms and the periodic table before we do our atom lab. So our directions for this paper says read the information below about atomic models. Highlight the parts that you find more important. Then follow along with the directions as you draw the part of the model on of argon. Atoms on the tiny parts. Atoms are tiny parts. Atoms are tiny units that make up all matter. Atoms are not something we can see. So the model we use to represent atoms has changed over time as more information has been discovered. The currently accepted model of the atom shows the nucleus with the electron cloud like the bottom of the picture here. That model is difficult to draw though, so we usually draw atomic models like the planetary model on the top. The electrons don't actually travel in rings around the nucleus, but it is easier to see what we have in the atom when we draw that way. These rings we draw around the atom are called orbitals or energy levels. Different atoms have different numbers of energy levels. Atoms also contain three different subatomic particles: protons, neutrons, and electrons. The number of energy levels in an atom is determined by its number of electrons. It is really easy to figure out how many energy levels an atom has by looking at the periodic table. The horizontal row or period of the element corresponds with the number of energy levels. This can be 1 through 7. Find argon on the periodic table. Which period is it? You can find that answer off of the periodic table example on your previous page or on the slides right here that I am inserting now. The neutrons are also found in the nucleus of the atom. They are about the same size of protons, but they do not have a charge. They are neutral. The mass number of the periodic table corresponds with the number of particles in the nucleus. So if you know the mass number and the atomic number of an atom, you can figure out the number of neutrons by subtraction. Once again, I will put in the website here for you to utilize. What is the atomic number for argon? How many neutrons does argon have? Draw a correct number of neutrons in your model and fill in your key. Finally, you will actually do this on paper and you will also insert a copy of it here. Finally, you have electrons. The electrons reside in the atomic energy levels outside of the nucleus, and they have a negative charge. The electrons are much smaller than the protons or neutrons. This is why they are not included in the atomic mass. The number of electrons for a neutral atom will always match the number of protons. The electrons fill up the inner energy levels first before they move to the outer energy levels. The smallest energy level, the one that is closest to the nucleus, can only hold 2 electrons. The second energy level can only hold up to 8 electrons, and the third energy level can hold up to 18 electrons. Now, based on this information, you're going to answer 7 through 10. How many total electrons does argon contain? How many electrons does the first energy level have? How many electrons does the will go in the second energy level, and how many electrons are left over for the third energy level? You'll finish drawing your complete number of electrons on your model, and you're going to take and insert a new slide with a picture of your model. Right here, you're going to use your shapes in your text box and add the correct number of electrical orbitals and subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons, to these cards. You will refer back to the reading if needed, and you will also need to reference your periodic table. The circle in the middle represents the nucleus. Use the same symbols and colors as you did on the previous page. You're going to be doing the same thing here. And then you're going to look at that periodic table and record its group number, and then count how many electrons it has in the outermost energy level. Look at your data on the table on the previous slide. Do you see a relationship between your number and the number of electrons on the outermost energy level? These outer level electrons are called valence electrons, and they are responsible for bonding. Complete as much as you can with the table below. Use the new relationship of the group numbers to determine the number of the outer level electrons instead of drawing the models. Now, we're going to move on to your periodic table card of elements. This is just information that you can use to reference for your atoms lab as well as for your periodic table assignment. So your directions here says that you need to read the information below while looking at the periodic table. While you're reading, highlight the last 3 things you think are important to know. The periodic table is the way scientists have organized all the elements we know. There are reasons the elements are lined up certain ways. There is a chemical symbol and numbers, and numbers on each tile of the periodic table. The chemical symbol is 1 or 2-letter abbreviations for the element name, sometimes based on the Latin name and not the modern. The numbers on the tile are the atomic number and the average atomic mass. The atomic number of the elements tells you how many protons that element has. When the atom is neutral, which means it has no charge, it will have the same number of electrons as it does protons. What is the chemical symbol for potassium? Atomic number 79. What element is atomic number 94? How many protons does iodine have? Atomic number 53. The average atomic mass of an element can be rounded to a whole number, so you can figure out how many neutrons the atoms contain. The rounded mass represents the total number of particles in an atom's nucleus. These particles are both the protons and neutrons. Since the atomic number represents the protons and the mass number represents the protons and neutrons, you can subtract the two numbers to find out how many neutrons it contains. How many neutrons does barium contain? Number 56. Elements are each assigned a period in which which is in a horizontal row. These periods show how many energy levels or orbitals that atoms have around them, which contain electrons. There are also groups or families, which are the vertical columns. Within these groups, elements tend to have similar properties like valence electrons and reactivity. The valence electrons are the electrons in the outer energy level. They are the ones responsible for the atoms bonding with other atoms. Elements in the second period, in the second row, have how many energy levels? Name three other elements in the same group or family as francium, atomic number 87. You will be given details of one element. You will complete the social networking profile for your element. Use the information from your card as well as information from your reading and to help you complete this. So instead of being given an element because I am not here, I want you to choose an element. I want you to tell me what its name is, what the number of particles are for protons, neutrons, electrons. You're going to find a picture on the internet and paste it right here. And then you're going to tell me where it belongs, what its home is, and as far as where it's grouped, what's its family members, and what is its energy levels are. Right here, you're going to take and you're going to refer back to your periodic table, and you're going to draw lines to match the element names with their information. You can refer to these sites if you need further information or help. Look at the small section of periodic table below and explain as much as you can about one of the elements that you did not use so far in this assignment. So you will pick an element and you'll put it here, and then you're going to break down and tell me how many neutrons, protons, electrons it is, and who their family are, what's their home. On this particular slide, you're going to take and look at an element from the periodic table, and you're going to tell me how many protons, neutrons, electrons it has, what's its valence electrons, and its energy levels. Don't forget, you can also refer back to the slides 1 through 7 for this. Read the information on this page and while looking at the periodic table and answer the questions. The periodic table is the way scientists have organized all the elements we know. There are reasons the elements are lined up in certain ways. There are chemical symbols and numbers on each tile of the periodic table. The chemical symbol is a 1 or two-letter abbreviation of the element name, sometimes based on the Latin name and not the modern one. The numbers on the tile are the atomic number and the average atomic mass. The atomic number of the element tells you how many protons that the element has. When the atom is neutral with no charge, it still can have the same number of electrons as it does protons. The average atomic mass of an element can be rounded to a whole number so you can figure out how many neutrons an atom contains. The rounded mass number represents the total number of particles in the atom's nucleus. These particles are both the protons and the neutrons. Since the atomic number represents the neutrons and the mass number represents the protons and neutrons, you can subtract the two numbers to find how many neutrons it contains. Elements are each assigned a period, which is a horizontal row. These periods show how many energy levels or orbitals that atoms have around them, which contain electrons. There are also groups or families, which are the vertical columns. Within these groups, elements tend to have similar properties like valence electrons and reactivity. The valence electrons are the electrons in an outer energy level. They are the ones responsible for the atoms bonding with other atoms. Now is choice time for this part right here. You're going to choose to either get a element card made, you're going to take and create a conversation. Actually, I deleted that one, so we will just take and delete this. There we go. So we're going to create the element book on this particular one, and then from there you are going to match them up again, and then you're going to continue to choose an element and tell me what you know about them, and then that is it.